Hello fellow vanguards and the public. In this video, we will discuss the decision-making process, including the costs and effects of voting and why state officials should make decisions for the people. We will then analyze the system of democratic centralism often used in revolutionary societies. An important aspect to the decision-making process is the desire to lower the costs of making decisions. Why should we lower the cost of making decisions? Simply, in the extreme case that the state spent all its resources to make decisions, there would be no more resources left to actually execute those decisions. One of the methods used to make a decision is voting because it reveals voters' preferences. We will now discuss the costs of voting. In the decision-making process, there are two costs. The consensus cost is the cost to actually agree upon a decision. The external cost is the cost to enforce your will on the people. In the extreme case of a single dictator, the consensus cost is extremely cheap. Nobody other than the dictator has to agree for a decision to be made. However, it may cost more to call in the secret police to enforce that decision on the people. On the other hand, in the extreme case of a unanimous vote, the external cost is extremely cheap, as everyone already votes unanimously in agreement of the decision. However, the consensus costs may be infinitely large, as the final person required to make the decision can choose to blackmail the others and charge a large sum to get his vote of approval. This is called the holdout problem. In the case of land, eminent domain can be used to prevent the holdout problem and enforce what is best for society. Eminent domain is the right of a state to requisition private property for public use. As you can see in the graph, the cheapest option is usually simple majority voting, in which the winning decision is achieved by at least one vote over 50% of the total votes. However, this is not always the case. As you can see from examples in American Congress, some decisions require a 2/3 majority to pass because the external costs are higher than consensus costs. The Samuelson Critique states that the outcome of simple majority rule voting is likely not socially optimal. For voting to lead to a socially optimal outcome, the chosen outcome through voting must equal the socially optimal outcome, and this is rarely the case in reality. Now, the next topic we discuss is the benefit of having state officials make decisions for the people. As we discussed earlier, we wish to lower the costs of making decisions. State officials serve this purpose, as it is much cheaper to have several hundred officials vote on each agenda rather than have millions or billions of people vote on agendas. It would incur massive administrative costs to have the people vote and to have the votes counted. Another benefit of having state officials make decisions for the people is that they can also specialize in state administration. It would cause a huge economic loss for every single person to be informed of every single agenda. If this were the case, it would take away from each person's potential labor output and cause a loss in production for the state. Specialization will be discussed further in another video. Revolutionary societies find a unique optimum that minimizes the external and consensus costs. Often, having a one-person rule, like in a monarchy, or a mass vote, like in a direct democracy, is much too expensive for a society that is oriented towards a more productive future for the people. Here, the majority party advances the people's best interests through the system of democratic centralism. Democratic centralism is a system in which decisions are made democratically through voting among party members and in which decisions are binding on all members. Here, the external cost is kept very low because the system has a built-in requirement that every voter complies with the decision of the vote. In the case that a voter chooses to violate this system, there are coerced labor prisons that bring productive benefits to society and efficient policing by state security that make people disappear with minimal expense to the state. The consensus cost is a rising curve just like any other consensus cost for voting. When combined, the minimized total cost will indicate an optimal consensus value somewhere below 50% of voters. This may be why the system has been criticized by reactionaries as being non-democratic.